So yeah, thanks for watching the previous video, and I'm just going to take you into some practical examples. Hunting malicious infrastructure using Shodan. Without further ado, let's get sort of moving with it. As you can see here, we've got a post on Twitter or X talking about a new remote access Trojan called the Dexware RAT. It looks like there's a IP address and a port there for the C2 that they've posted. It also tells about the ISN and sort of communications and communicating files, and also the virus total. Also at the moment looks like this infrastructure is clean. Probably some of this in development, kind of a new remote access Trojan, more than likely. So how do we approach this? Obviously, Shodan needs IP addresses. If we'd had a domain or something like that, we might want to punch that into another tool like VirusTotal and maybe get the IP address. So we've got a starting point because we've got one here now. We can do that immediately in Shodan. So we get to Shodan. Obviously, we're going to get the front page up. We're going to need to defang. That's why we're going to refang that IP address and search for it. Once we search for it, I think again we saw this port 5000 in the advisory. We've got SSH open on this. We've also got the port 5000 there, which is the one we're kind of interested in. So we can dig into that and look at more of it, but immediately I think sometimes just from this page we can take a lot out of it. So you can see that this title of this page actually looks like it's going to be quite unique. So if we hold control and click on that, we can do a search and see that, yeah, that's looking pretty unique. You can also see the header here, could be unique. The header alone sometimes isn't enough. So, it could just be related to the server that's running. But sometimes it is actually unique enough. So what we can do with this is pop in a text pad for now. Get rid of the date. The date field tends not to be unique. And can do here is I'll grab another one. But yeah, let's have a little look to see. Paste that in there. So again, we've got a match there as well. So it could be good enough. We could use the two, so in combination, looking at the title and that header. So yeah, there's potential for two rules there. If we sort of go back into this one and kind of dig in, I guess, a little bit more into the server itself. It's always worth checking SSH keys, so maybe the developer or the threat actors reuse an SSH key so we can identify additional infrastructure they're using. In this case, it's not, it's just unique to that server. Be careful, sometimes an SSH key might just be unique to the hosting provider and not necessarily the threat actor. So, there's some pitfalls just looking at an SSH key itself, but certainly a lot of ransomware actors, we have seen reuse of SSH key across a lot of their C2 infrastructure, so it can be quite a good indicator at times. So yeah, not got anything there from the SSL. The other option we've got is that Shodan uses hashes, so we would have hashed this header already. Again, this is something that or the HTML page that responds as well, that potentially can be the hash there. So again, that hash is also looking quite good. So on this one, we've got 3 that we potentially can use, or we could use a combination of them. So for example, we could take this hash, just to duplicate that page, and then maybe sort of go for the title as well, which was the Dexware RAT. Again, necessarily perhaps omit the v1.0 just because then if there's a subsequent version we can still catch it, and that's probably going to still be pretty unique. So there's that one. Again, we can use the HTTP header that we've got. Also, we could also add the title onto that to make it a bit more robust. I can also see, just copy all of that header I've got there, and also see that it looks like it's a Python based RAT, so we can add Python on the end of it again, or pop in the title, give that as oops, my bad, pop that in there. think we've got a pretty damn good rule there. When I'm tracking these and putting it into our sort of track, then we might put a couple of variants to this, particularly if there's not a clear winner. We might find some servers using 2 or 3 of the factors. We might have 1 or 2 that are slightly more unique. But again, it's about looking at all the server results you'd get, figuring out if the headers are consistent or if there's any SSL data or other information. And once you've got that, then building that more what we'd call a multi-rule, which is going to be more robust in the long run. We might also want to do something if we've got the premium version of Shodan, is to maybe exclude some potential false positive generating results. So, for example, sometimes some of this information might be being presented by a CDN endpoint, and we don't want to pick up CDNs as part of our results, or it's going to blow up our SOC with alerts if that does happen. That's particularly common of things like favicon icons, because they can be hosted by the content delivery network, which again can mean that you get a lot of false positive results and lose trust with the SOC, which is not what we want to do. So yeah, that was first example, Dexware RAT. We can see we've got a pretty good rule there from the end of that. Maybe keep that in memory as well for the CTF later on. Thanks for listening, and goodbye. Hello again. So we're back and going to show another example of how we can track some infrastructure. And this time we've got the Chaos malware variant, which it's got command and control server as well. The thing is, we just looked at with the Dexware RAT, so we're starting with an IP address. So I'm going to take all of that IP address actually. Looks like this time it's run on port 8080, but it's not guaranteed. You can see some others here obviously running on much higher ports, like 50,000, probably trying to look like they're one of those high number ephemeral ports rather than a consistent ones, so they are kind of a little bit more obfuscated in traffic. But yeah, let's have a look at this one. Let's see if we can get lucky and get a panel or something. So we can see again we've got an SSH key, as mentioned, always worth checking. See if we see if we can look for any additional infrastructure off the SSH key. This instance not possible. What else have we got? So okay, again this one's quite straightforward, I guess, if we look at the title of it. But again, titles can be changed, right? A lot of threat actors are lazy and leave default configs, which is good for us, but there's also a lot of threat actors out there that will change things. Want to be able to detect this either way, if it's out the box setup or it's being customized. We can have a look at that HTTP HTML hash as well, which actually is looking pretty good, right? So that is definitely potential detection we can use for this. We can see we found several other servers as well. We could have done similar, I guess. So from here, we take a look at that HTTP header. Let's get a file up again, so it's popping into here. Again, that time we want to get rid of. That's going to probably limit our search results unless they've started the server up at exactly the same time. We run all that again. So we've actually got a wider set of results now. We've caught some additional servers potentially, which is good. We've got 9 IP addresses there. If we wanted to just double check that we've not just got it running on different ports, then we can use the facet analysis in Shodan, which is quite handy. We can go down to that IP address, and then we can actually see we do have 9 distinct new C2 servers, which is bloody great actually. We've expanded by 4, and that's what we want to do. We don't want to just see the standard kind of configuration or setup. We want to be able to identify additional servers if they're out there. I mean, looking at some of the stuff that's quite unique and maybe get us broader results, I can see that this field is looking quite interesting, this JWT realm chaos. So if I was to just open another page and we'll just take a look at that. So yeah, I've got 9 results with that, which is interesting. So we've got the header, we've got that particular keyword that's in the header that's looking to get us a little bit more wider. we've got a hash that is specific to those 5 servers that we can use. What would be good is looking at one of the ones that doesn't exist in this initial list, so in the wider list. So you can see that these 87, 89, if I look at the 5 results, I don't see that 87, 89 in there. So that's one of the ones that's like ever so slightly different. So perhaps if we zero in on that particular host and see what else this has that could be reasonably unique. Obviously in this one they've not got a title called Chaos, which clearly is a good idea for OPSEC. If you're an adversarial, it's going to make it quite easy to detect. But like we can see, there's some other data in here, okay? We've got some other kind of, looks like HTML page there. So even though it doesn't have a title on the top of the official page there or result on Shodan, we could still probably search for that HTML value as well being returned to actually see it. You can see there's actually some other bits in here, so like Tiago Lampert. So I'm assuming this gentleman may be the creator of the framework. So again, you can see here, and I think we've talked about previously in some of the earlier slides around like GitHub being a good resource to dig out information here. So just having a look in the this Tiago Lampert. So let's try his name. Let's see what we can get with that. So we got 3 unique results for that one. I wonder if we were to yeah, so quite unique as well in the name. So again, you can see with this C2, we've got a few options. So we've got this www-authenticate JWT realm chaos. There's the chaos title that we can use. We also had the actual header itself, which was quite fruitful. The hash, the Tiago Lampert value, that was something that was more unique in the 3 additional ones we saw. And yeah, for that particular cluster that have just used the defaults, and we've sort of seen those as well. What's interesting is some kind of looking if there's like some hosting provider overlap. So doesn't appear to be too much there, but sometimes maybe a hosting provider overlap might indicate it could be sort of same threat actor or related to that threat actor. But for now, yeah, we've got several characteristics there we can use to create a rule. And like, as I mentioned in the Dexware RAT example, we might want to use that JWT realm or www authenticate JWT realm chaos in combination with the title, in combination with the author value for the pages that were popping up with the GitHub page in there. So another sort of relatively easy one to track, and hopefully that helps give a more practical example. Hello again. So we're back for another practical example on tracking infrastructure. This time we're looking at the Covenant C2, but I'm going to start with looking at something quite interesting. One of the projects out there that's been very useful for both doing offensive security, purple teaming, as well as looking at it in reverse to kind of hunt infrastructure or hunt these C2s. So George O'Chiles and some of the others out there have put together this brilliant open source project. It's called the C2 Matrix. It's tracking a whole host of C2s, they GitHub pages where they're from, as well as information on how to sort of install and run them. It's very much like a sort of red team kind of Bible on C2s. But yeah, I want to just show one use case around this, particularly for sort of, Covenant, but it'll work for others around the sort of favicons that are used on the pages. like quite a neat way of searching for those. So you can use the website. There's a spreadsheet here which is kind of like a master with everything in, which I think's like awesome. Gives you a ton of detail on there. But for this one, we'll just quickly go to Covenant, and you can see in here, obviously, there is a GitHub page for Covenant. These GitHub pages for C2 frameworks or malware tools when available are really a sort of an awesome place to start your research. You can find sort of HTTP header configurations, SSL certificates, obviously in this case a favicon icon, which we can use for detection. So again, just looking at this one by here, we view the raw data on the favicon icon. We can grab that URL, and there is actually tools out there. There's some scripts, but this is just one that's out there of many. You can pop that in, hit submit, and then I've got the URL. So it's quite nice, this one, where you can actually just click the Shodan link to get it, and straight away you can see we're sort of tracking some Covenant C2 servers, which is brilliant. So straight off the bat, we've got ourselves quite a handy detection. I think I mentioned earlier, certainly with the premium account, you probably want to be minusing out CDNs, maybe even sort of some cloud with this, so you don't get a bunch of other things. There is actually, I think, a tag as well for honeypot. Need to double check in the guidance around tags, but yeah, I think there's a honeypot one, so that's definitely something you want for some of these, because people do host honeypots, or people do put favicon icons in CDNs, which can really sort of catch you out, and obviously create a lot of false positives for your alerting system or SOC, which they will not thank you for, the analysts. But yeah, that's a nice way of doing that. If we dip in as well onto Covenant, we'll probably see if there's anything else here we can use for detection. Yeah, I mentioned before, when you look at C2 servers, I was trying to mention it so we don't forget, is double checking SSH key hashes, because again, sometimes threat actors are lazy of bad OPSEC. This case doesn't have one. It's 3389, so that's their RDP port, probably for doing hands-on keyboard stuff if they get a connection or creds. And then yeah, obviously 7443, that's what they've got Covenant running on. Yeah, the favicon hash. What else do we have? You can see in the SSL configuration there's a hard-coded Covenant value, which probably be quite good. So again, with SSL, it's the SSL subject that is using, and the issuer as well is Covenant. So we can do that a couple of ways. We've got SSL.subject.cn. Again, that might have got that wrong. Oops, sorry. Yeah, exclude that. And so while we're at looking at Covenant, we can also sort of try and dig into one of these hosts, I guess, and see if there's anything else we could be looking at here. So if we looked at the port it's running on, I think we can see there's potentially some unique stuff in the header. We can take a look and see if that hash gives us one. So probably not something we can use immediately. Let's have a look in the SSL values. So yeah, you can see there's some hard-coded values there. So they've left it in there to allow the defenders to be able to detect this. Obviously, nothing stopping threat actor running their own certificates. So this is only going to catch probably those low effort, low skill actors that are not trying to enforce kind of proper operational security or OPSEC. So, but yeah, anyway, let's take a look at this. And one way we can do it is actually go into the raw data view. So it's to just go into there a second, and let's just go down to that port. So again, we can see we've got the SSL section there. There's a JARM value. It could be quite useful, so we'll definitely sort of run that on its own, and I don't think it's going to be good enough, but we just did that header hash, right? So that's, sorry, not the header hash. We just had a look at a header, which I will pull from here, sorry, so potentially pull that out. If I just apply that maybe with the JARM, get rid of that date. So all of a sudden we can see that's starting to look a little bit better, although again we've got this Realway login server. So again, potentially if using the same tech, same kind of HTTP server underneath, you can see there's probably some other ones here that might not be good. But just an example there, we potentially could use like the header in combination with some other stuff. I think if it's just that header, so you can see there's some strict X frames, so potentially if I was to look at X content type, maybe X frame options, if I was to do something along the lines of this, probably do a minus X content type minus X frame dash options. I can start to whittle that down just by some of those things. Again, this one though unfortunately looks, there's nothing to say that it's not a C2 server. We'd have to do some more investigation, but again, we look like we've probably got a couple here that maybe are still falling inside of what we don't want on our results. So again, I think whilst I probably could do another filter to whittle it down even more, we might still be getting some in there that are still unlikely to be covenant, although we are finding a few. But anyway, that's just a bit of an example where I want to go back to the SSLs where I sort of really want to go with this. Looking at those SSL values, we saw the JARM, we've got the certificate itself, so we've got certificate hashes as well as the subject and issuer CN. So I think in this case the issuer CN is probably pretty good. So again, using our issuer CN, I've got 10 results. Could also, use ssl.subject.cn. It's just to be more robust if both are being used. But again, it's just an example, I suppose, using SSL values as well for covenant servers. Again, sometimes using these in combination, using multiple options from things from the HTTP header, SSL, a JARM. These are things we can use to again build the right kind of detection patterns to be able to track this over time and not be too specific. So again, thanks for watching it, and that is a little bit on Covenant C2 and hunting for it using Shodan.